I mean, when it comes to taking on a case, do you have to feel the person is innocent, or do you feel like everyone deserves a proper defense? And you'll take on a case even if you feel the person actually did it.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I don't think, Vlad, that it's ever where you say like, oh, I think the person did it. I break cases down into two categories, and I'm always lecturing lawyers around. I've spoken in almost every state in the country, and when I speak to young lawyers, I always say we have two categories of cases. We have black and white cases and gray cases. Black and white case is where someone's like, I didn't do it. I mean, this murder, I was 75 miles away at the time. You know, I was at a graduation party. I wasn't anywhere near it. Then you have the gray case. The gray case is, damn straight, man, I took that gun and fired 7 shots. But you know why I did that? Because that dude has been beating me up, you know, a spouse, for 5 years and just punched me in the face and I had it. And all of a sudden you go, uh-oh, we have an affirmative defense.
But you actually beat a case like the one you're actually describing.
I did.
Right? A woman shot her husband in the face how many times?
I've
multiple
done
times.
Multiple times.
And you actually won in court, and she was found not guilty.
I would say that I've had more battered partner syndrome not guilties than anybody in the United States of America. I've done them all. I've done a woman that burnt her husband alive to the point he was unrecognizable. I used it there.
And you won that?
Won.
Wow.
Stabbing cases, gun cases, you name it. Early part of my career, I just started attracting those cases one after the other. You know, it's like anything else. You know, you get one great Vlad interview and then you get 5 more. I got one of those cases and then they just started lining up to the point where I was like, I got to do something else, because every time I look in my reception area, it's nothing but women waiting to come in and see me.
Huh.
So yeah.
I mean, do you ever take on cases where the person just can't afford you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Absolutely.
I'm thinking a lot of these cases you're describing,
Yeah.
these are not multimillionaire women every time.
Yeah. So we are really selective about our pro bono practice and our pro bono activity, but it's certainly something that's important, but it's what we choose. And so it's not something where someone comes to us, but if someone just can't afford us, but we think it's an important issue, then we'll do that. The other thing that's really important is, you know, I was president of the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, and working on issues like prisoner reentry are really important to me, and seeking out poor jurisdictions. I mean, Vlad, there are parts of this country that are third world, and there are no public defense providers. You have like one public defender handling hundreds and hundreds of cases in rural parts of Mississippi, Arkansas, Alabama, Tennessee. And the degree that I could spread a little gravitas and help some of those folks, I've tried to do that as much as I can.
Well, I mean, from my point of view, I think the biggest hurdle that you have is the co-defendants in Lil Durk's case. In the federal system, when do you find out exactly if these co-defendants are cooperating and exactly what they're going to be cooperating against?
Yeah. So it's good that you preface that in the federal system, because there's a difference between cooperating in the state system, as we've seen in cases in the news recently, that just falls apart.
Right, like the little Woody situation.
Yeah.
He got on the stand and just started being a maniac on the stand, and almost, I would say little Woody's the reason why Young Thug won his case.
Yeah, so that just never happens in a federal case. And I'm saying this to the guy that did an iconic interview of Sammy the Bull Gravano, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so you know, that's...
Yeah, I interviewed him multiple times.
That's an all-timer. Yeah. That's an all-timer. No,
19 murders, yeah.
Yeah, that's an all-timer. I'm not going to do a Vlad TV, but if you haven't watched that,
yeah,
everybody needs to watch that.
Yeah, check it out.
And so you just don't see that in federal litigation. People are locked in. I mean, they are locked in. They're in front of grand juries. There are multiple interviews. So you're looking at false statement cases. You're looking at perjury cases for the person if they do a 180, right? And so I say that all because it takes a while, because you don't know what's going on behind closed doors. And I just no way of knowing whether or not people are cooperating. But usually you don't hear about it until the process has really worked its way along and the person is locked in. And so you ask that and you put it in the federal context, because when it does happen, now I'm not talking about this case, generally speaking, the process has really moved along. Now, why has it done that? And why is it different than in a state case? Because in the federal system, with minimum mandatories, you have truth in sentencing. So if someone's gonna get 20 years, they're gone for 20 years. If they're gonna get a life sentence, they're gone for the rest of their life. And the way that the government, the federal government works that is through 5K 1.1 or afterwards later on, a Rule 35. If there's substantial assistance, then the government goes to a judge and says, forget all that. They've been ratting, they've been snitching, they've been cooperating. It's time to slice and dice. It's a Walmart bargain basement sale. And the only way they can do that, with the federal sentencing guidelines is through cooperation. But the government doesn't get there until they really move it along quite a bit.
Okay, so if there are co-defendants in the Durk case that are cooperating, you'll get all their statements before the trial?
Yes, before they testify, we'll have everything.
Okay, is it right before the trial, or do you have a long leeway to actually prepare for that?
So
do they spring it on you right at the end?
No. Usually there's a court order and there's an agreement that it's a rather substantial period of time, but it's enough. Okay. Generally speaking, it's enough time for us to do a good cross-examination.
So you could actually do depositions with...
No depositions in
federal
federal
cases. Can't actually cross-examine them before they actually hit the stand. Oh, okay. Is it different in the state?
So there's only a handful of states that allow criminal depositions. Huh. And the one that's confused people the most is Florida. So when we think of Casey Anthony and we think of George Zimmerman, all those cross-examinations that you saw, right? If you've really looked, and I did commentary on those cases, if you really looked and like you were in this business, you could see they were just following along on their depositions. But Florida and a couple other states are standalone. The rest of the United States has no depositions in criminal cases, and there's no depositions in criminal cases in the federal system. Only exception is if somebody's in another country and you really can't get to them, you have to prove it to the court. And I've done that in 2 cases. I've done depositions in Germany that have been published and in Dubai.